In the vastness of space, 1,000 silver pinpricks twinkled against the black velvet of the universe. It would have been beautiful if it weren't for the fact that those shimmering lights were the flickers of an advancing alien armada. The enemy ships hung in formation like a constellation of death, slowly creeping toward the fragile human colonies on the edge of the galaxy. Commander Lucian Margrave stared at the tactical display aboard the UNS Resolute, the flagship of humanity's last remaining fleet. His dark eyes flicked over the screen, assessing the glowing red blips representing the alien warships. He knew what each of those symbols meant: death, fire, destruction, and yet it was his job to stop them. The room around him hummed with activity as his officers moved with precision and urgency. The human fleet, what was left of it, was nothing compared to the alien juggernaut approaching them. The enemy had ships that dwarfed anything humanity could produce. Their technology was years ahead: faster engines, stronger shields, more devastating weapons. Lucian could feel the weight of that technological gap pressing down on his shoulders, but he shoved it aside. A voice pulled him out of his thoughts. "Sir, the Endurance and Valor are ready for deployment," Lieutenant Sarah reported from her station. She was young, just out of the academy, and her voice trembled slightly, betraying her nerves. Lucian couldn't blame her. "Good," Lucian said, his voice as steady as stone. "Begin the decoy maneuver. We'll make them think we've got reinforcements coming from the rear." Lieutenant Sarah nodded, her hands moving over the controls. The Endurance and Valor were two of the decoy ships. Hulking, empty shells outfitted with holographic emitters and electronic warfare packages. To the alien sensors, they would look like fully operational warships. They had no weapons, no crew, just the illusion of strength. Lucian had commissioned their construction against the advice of his peers, who had dismissed the idea as reckless and wasteful. They had wanted to throw every remaining ship into the meat grinder of a frontal assault. But Lucian knew better. They couldn't win a war of attrition. They needed deception, subterfuge. They needed to survive long enough to find an advantage, however slim. The Endurance and Valor launched from the rear of the human fleet, gliding into the darkness of space, their electronic signatures blazing like suns. The alien warships, detecting the sudden appearance of what they believed to be reinforcements, began to shift, adjusting their formation to deal with the perceived threat. Lucian's lips twitched into a grim smile. The enemy, for all their superiority, could still be tricked. "Captain Merrill, have the fleet prepare for engagement. We strike while they're adjusting," Lucian ordered. Captain Merrill, standing at the opposite end of the bridge, turned to his comm officers. "All ships, prepare for attack formation. Target the lead alien vessels." The Resolute surged forward, and the remaining human warships followed, engines blazing as they hurtled toward the enemy line. Lucian watched as a small fleet, less than 20 ships, charged toward the alien formation, which numbered in the hundreds. It was madness on paper, but Lucian knew that if they waited any longer, the enemy would punch through to the colonies, and humanity would lose everything. The bridge lights dimmed, and the ship's interior shuddered as the engines pushed to full power. Outside, the stars blurred, and the alien ships grew larger on the view screen. The first wave of human fire struck, and the opening salvos bloomed in bright bursts of light as missiles and energy blasts smashed into the alien shields. Some of the enemy ships reeled under the assault, their shields flaring and flickering, but they were far from defeated. Lucian felt the familiar weight of fear clawing at his gut, but he pushed it aside. He couldn't afford doubt now. This was the only option they had. Enemy ships returning fire. Sarah called out. The Resolute shook violently as the alien counterattack hit. The shields absorbed most of the energy, but Lucian could feel the heat of the impacts through the deck plating. He gripped the edge of his command chair, bracing himself. "Damage report," he barked. "Shields holding at 80%, Captain Merrill replied. Lucian nodded. "Keep up the pressure. We need to punch through their line before they realize the decoys are a ruse." The Resolute fired again, launching a barrage of torpedoes and plasma bolts at the nearest alien cruiser. The enemy's ship, a massive behemoth with a sleek, silver hull, shuddered as the torpedoes struck home. Its shields flickered and failed, and the plasma bolts ripped through its hull, sending debris and flames into space. But for every alien ship that faltered, more came forward, relentless in their advance. Lucian's eyes flicked to the tactical display again. The enemy was adapting, their formation tightening, cutting off the gaps that Lucian had tried to exploit. They had realized the decoy ships weren't real. His fleet was now fully exposed. Damn it, he muttered under his breath. All ships, evasive maneuvers, pull back and regroup. The human fleet began to retreat, but the alien warships pursued, their weapons cutting through the darkness with terrifying precision. One by one, the human ships began to falter under the assault. A destroyer exploded to Lucian's left, the fireball lighting up the view screen. Another frigate lost its engines and drifted, helpless, as alien fighters swarmed it. "Sir, we're losing ships," Sarah cried, panic creeping into her voice. Lucian knew it was bad. They had inflicted damage, but it wasn't enough. They were being overwhelmed. "Signal the remaining ships to fall back to the asteroid field," Lucian ordered. "We can use the terrain to our advantage." The asteroid field loomed ahead, a dense cluster of rocks and debris orbiting the outermost planet of the system. It wasn't much, but it was better than open space. The human fleet veered toward it, engines flaring as they raced for cover. The alien ships followed, undeterred. As the Resolute entered the field, Lucian's mind raced. He knew they couldn't keep running. The alien fleet would catch them sooner or later. They needed something more than just a clever retreat. "Sarah, scan the asteroid field. I want to know if there's anything we can use." The lieutenant's hands flew over the console, and after a moment, she looked up, her face pale. "There's an old mining outpost deep within the field, abandoned for years." "But that's perfect," Lucian cut her off. His mind was already racing ahead. "Have the fleet scatter and hide among the asteroids. We'll lead the enemy to the outpost." Captain Merrill frowned. "The outpost? It's a ruin, Lucian. It won't provide much cover." "We're not using it for cover," Lucian said. "We're going to use it as bait." The human fleet broke apart, each ship diving into the asteroid field, using the massive rocks to shield themselves from enemy sensors. The alien warships followed, navigating the treacherous terrain with frightening ease. But Lucian had anticipated that. The aliens were efficient, precise, but they lacked imagination. They wouldn't expect what he was about to do. "Captain Merrill, transmit the outpost coordinates to the enemy," Lucian ordered. Merrill blinked in surprise. "You want to give them our location?" Lucian nodded. "We're going to make them think we're gathering there for a last stand. They'll focus their fire on it, giving us time to regroup." Merrill hesitated for a moment, then nodded. "Understood." The Resolute transmitted the coordinates, and Lucian watched as the alien warships began to converge on the outpost. Just as he had hoped, they were taking the bait. Now came the hard part. "Prepare the remaining decoy ships," Lucian said. "Once the aliens are close enough, we'll launch them." The minutes ticked by, and the alien fleet grew closer, their massive warships cutting through the asteroid field like predators closing in on prey. Lucian waited, his heart pounding in his chest. The tension in the air was palpable. "Now!" he shouted. The decoy ships launched from hidden positions, hurtling toward the alien fleet. Their electronic signatures flared, mimicking the signals of fully armed warships. The alien vessels immediately shifted their focus, targeting the decoys with everything they had. The mining outpost exploded in a brilliant burst of light as the aliens unleashed their full firepower. The decoys went down one by one, but they had served their purpose. "Now's our chance," Lucian said. "All ships, regroup and target their flank. Hit them with everything you've got." The human fleet surged out from the asteroid field, guns blazing. The aliens, momentarily distracted by the destruction of the decoys, were caught off guard. Lucian watched as the tide of battle shifted, if only for a moment. Several alien ships went down in rapid succession, their shields overwhelmed by the concentrated fire. But then, just as quickly, the alien fleet reoriented. Lucian's stomach dropped as he realized the enemy wasn't panicking. They were adapting again, faster than he had anticipated. The human advantage was slipping away. We've done what we can," Lucian muttered, staring at the tactical display as the alien fleet adapted, tightening their formation again. "We need to fall back now or we'll be trapped. Sir, if we retreat again, there might not be anything left for us to come back to," Captain Merrill said, his voice low though steady. It was the truth neither of them wanted to face, but both knew. The colonies didn't have much time left. Lucian clenched his jaw, feeling the weight of every life depending on his next decision. His mind raced. The decoys had worked for a brief window, but the enemy was too strong, too quick to respond. His fleet, though battered, still had some fight left, but a head-on engagement would be suicide. He had to think of something, another trick, another feint. Then an idea sparked. Insane, reckless, but it was the only option. "Captain Merrill, have the fleet prepare for one final push. We're going to make them think we've gone all in." Merrill raised an eyebrow. "And what do we do after that, sir?" "We're going to bait them into overextending." Lucian's eyes flicked toward the holographic display of the asteroid field. "We've been playing defensive this entire time. We need to make them think we're desperate enough to throw everything at them. But we'll fall back. Not just to the asteroid field, but deeper into the gas giant atmosphere." Merrill's face tightened in disbelief. "Sir, no ship can survive in the upper layers of a gas giant's atmosphere. The gravity alone." Lucian interrupted, his voice steel. "That's why they won't follow us. But we're not staying there long. Once they shift to full pursuit, we'll use the atmosphere's electromagnetic storms to mask our retreat, double back, and hit them from behind." Sarah glanced up from her console. "Commander, that's risky. If we miscalculate—" "I know the risks," Lucian replied sharply, his gaze hardening. "But if we don't take them, the last colonies will be ash." He didn't wait for objections. There wasn't time. "Merrill, order the fleet into formation. We're going to sell this like it's our final stand. Make it look good." The command echoed through the ship, and soon the Resolute and the remaining human vessels began to maneuver, charging straight toward the alien fleet with full weapons array. The enemy, sensing what seemed like a final, desperate attack, responded in kind, pouring more and more firepower into their advance. But as the first human ships began to engage, Lucian gave the order. "Fall back." Hard burn to the gas giant. One by one, the human vessels broke away from the fight, diving toward the looming sphere of the gas giant below. The alien ships pursued, exactly as Lucian had predicted. Their overwhelming advantage had made them overconfident, believing the humans had no more tricks left. As the human fleet plunged into the upper atmosphere of the gas giant, the thick clouds of methane and ammonia quickly swallowed their ships. Lucian felt the strain of the gravitational pull through the ship's frame. The Resolute groaned under the pressure. "Steady," he muttered under his breath, watching as the view screen flickered with electrical discharges and swirling gases. Just a little longer. The enemy ships hovered at the boundary of the atmosphere, hesitant to follow. For a moment, Lucian feared they might have seen through the ruse. But then the first wave of alien fighters pushed into the upper layers. Lucian's heart raced. Now was the critical moment. The storm intensified around them, electromagnetic surges flickering through the gas clouds, creating interference. Lucian glanced at his tactical display, watching as the alien ship's sensor readings began to degrade. "Now," he barked. "All ships, cut engines and prepare for evasive maneuver." The human ships, previously hurtling toward the depths of the gas giant, suddenly killed their forward thrust. The momentum still carried them deeper into the atmosphere, but without the engines burning, they became ghostly blips in the storm, almost invisible to the enemy's scanners. Lucian's hands clenched the armrest as the ship lurched, barely avoiding an electrical surge from the surrounding storm. "Come on," he whispered under his breath. The tension in the bridge was palpable. Then it happened. The alien ships, disoriented by the electromagnetic interference, shifted their formation. In an attempt to compensate for their sensor loss, they moved deeper into the atmosphere, exposing their rear flank. Lucian's eyes lit up. Reverse course. Full engines. Target their rear lines. The human fleet roared to life again, engines flaring as they shot out of the storm, weaving between the deadly electrical surges. The alien fleet, caught in the worst of the interference, didn't have time to react. Human ships poured plasma fire and torpedoes into their rear ranks, hitting vital systems and igniting chain reactions across several enemy vessels. One by one, the alien warships began to fall. Explosions blossomed across the void, lighting up the stormy atmosphere in eerie flashes of light. The once impenetrable alien line was in chaos, their formation broken. "Target their flagship," Lucian ordered, his voice cold and resolute. "We take it down, and the rest will follow." The Resolute led the charge, firing everything it had at the enemy flagship. The alien ship's shields flickered, strained by the barrage. Lucian could see the cracks beginning to form, the shimmering energy field buckling under the relentless assault. The Resolute led the charge, firing everything it had at the enemy flagship. The alien ship's shields flickered, strained by the barrage. Lucian could see the cracks beginning to form, the shimmering energy field buckling under the relentless assault. A moment later, the shields collapsed and a well-placed salvo of torpedoes smashed into the flagship's reactor core. The resulting explosion sent a shockwave rippling through space, and the remaining alien ships, suddenly without central command, began to scatter. The tide had turned. Cheers erupted on the bridge. But Lucian remained silent, watching the tactical display as the alien fleet withdrew. It wasn't a victory, not yet. They had won this battle. But the war was far from over. "Sir, they're retreating," Sarah said, her voice filled with relief. We did it." Lucian nodded, but his expression remained grim. "For now." He stood, looking out at the vastness of space beyond the viewport, where the remnants of the alien fleet fled into the darkness. His crew had fought valiantly, and they had given humanity a precious reprieve. But Lucian knew this was just the beginning. The aliens would be back, stronger, smarter, and more determined than ever. And when they returned, Lucian would be ready.